Hello and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cello Music. Hi, my name is Aaron. This is episode 82. 3 lyrical pieces. This is by Georg Goltermann. Longing, Joy and Sorrow, and Evening Song. Those are the titles of all 3 lyrical pieces. I hope you will come along on this journey with me, exploring relatively unknown music. A little about this Forgotten Cello Music podcast. It's all about music for cello that has largely been forgotten by the mainstream in the classical world. This has been an interest of mine for some years, that is to look for and play through as much cello music as possible, especially the ones that people are kind of skipping over. And then I want to find the works that are most interesting to me and that I think should be presented to others. And that's what you have here in this podcast, now 82 episodes and counting. A little something about how this podcast comes to be. It's a private enterprise. I do it all by myself. The project has no benefactors. It has no support except for you who send donations to paypal.me/travelingcello or by purchasing my arrangements either at sheetmusicplus.com or directly at my Patreon, where you can purchase without becoming a member. But you can become a member very easily if you would like to and receive a sticker or shirt or a mug if you're a member for 3 months or more. And that is patreon.com/travelingcello. And Traveling Cello happens to be my YouTube channel as well, so I do hope you go and visit there. Drei lyrische Stücke, Opus 117. 3 lyrical pieces. Well, with that little German title, it's probably no secret that Goltermann was from Germany. This episode marks a new chapter, as it were, in the direction of this podcast. For some time now, many episodes, I had been exploring works by way of reading The Violoncello and Its History by Joseph Wasilewski, an intensely good book for anyone that wants to know more about the history of the cello, which he delves deep into pre-cello history, and then, of course, all of the cellists and the composers of cello and teachers of cello. You can find out hundreds and hundreds of names therein. To recap, the place of the aforementioned book was a systematic reading and reporting from, and again, I just chose the things that I thought I could represent well with and that I liked. This book will continue to serve as an indispensable resource, and I will probably look at it from time to time as far as quotes and seeing what names pop up if I can't happen to think of anything. That's probably not too hard, but, it could come up. But I will not be looking at it from a systematic point of view for probably a very long time. It was an incredible journey, and I hope that you go back and listen to a number of those episodes, and you can listen to all of them. I didn't count them, add them up, because I did episodes that were kind of like interjectory episodes that were not in association with the violoncello and its history, so it must be over 50 episodes by now, I would think. On to the 3 lyrical pieces, Opus 117 by Georg Goltermann. This has been sitting in my PDF collection for quite some time. I looked at them occasionally, and of course, to download anything or to put it in my collection, one of my rules is I have to read through it at least once. Now, I did read through them off and on over the last couple of years, And it wasn't until about 6 months ago that I was really struck by their expression. When I read through them, I think I read through them a couple of times in a row, and it started to dawn on me, hey, I think he's going a little deeper here. And it felt like that, especially after I added accompaniment to them, which took a long time to enter into your muse score. Now, as a group, they took me through a little journey of emotions. Which is appropriate. Listen to the titles: Longing, Joys and Sorrows, and An Evening Song. Let's review Goltermann. A little bio. He was born in 1824 and died in 1898. He was from Hanover, Germany. Later he moved to Munich to take lessons, cello lessons from Josef Mentor, and composition lessons from Ignaz Lachner. As solo cellist, he toured around Europe briefly. In 1852, he became music director in Würzburg, Germany. Then a year later, in 1853, he accepted an offer to become deputy music director in the Stadttheater, or the State Theater in Frankfurt am Main. 21 years later, in 1874, he was promoted to principal music director. And then he died in Frankfurt, the same city, in 28 years later. His music now was actually quite popular during his lifetime, and the concertos, of which he wrote 8, were actually rather widely known and performed. Today, sadly, there aren't that many that are even learned by students. I think number 4 must be one that is well known, and then there's a D minor that I never learned as a student, but I've met others that did, and were kind of astonished that I didn't learn it. He wrote dozens of works suitable for students to hone their skills on, such as tone pictures, nocturnes, capriccios, these lyric pieces, and of course concertos. There are also many compositions that he wrote that are a good deal more difficult and do prove to have a pretty nice depth of character as well. I'm thinking immediately of his grand duos, which are quite like sonatas. And I should also mention that he wrote 3 sonatinas, which are great learning material for any student who is looking to improve their knowledge of sonata writing and how to kind of pace yourself in a sonata as well. Now on to number 1, Sehnsucht, or Longing. This is the first of the 3 lyric pieces. The form is ABA with piano introduction and short coda. It is in the E minor tonality and written in the 3/4 meter. It uses the D string almost as much as it uses the A string in the melody. It seems that the A string is a really bright string, so it's almost as if he's kind of saying this longing needs to have some brighter sounds, but it needs to be evened out. It needs to be balanced by some of the more muted D string sounds as well. And I'm very happy for that, because oftentimes you hear so much A string playing in melodies that it gets a little bit tiresome. I don't know, maybe it's my playing, maybe it's the cello, but in general, I like it when melodies go back and forth between the A and D strings, and some of the lower strings would be nice too. But he doesn't use the lower strings very often in melodic writing. The solo cello plays quite easily against this accompaniment in Longing, which mostly provides an appropriate backdrop. It occasionally hints at melody, in the introduction, of course, and somewhat in the middle, and then again at the coda. I think this movement is simple enough to play, finding the notes and getting around, but it does, to my mind, take a little searching to find the right voice, the right character, because it's longing, and there's so much of the melody that takes place on the A string, that brighter voice, that it seems to be a little despite or in spite of the title, Longing. That's my thinking, but tell me what you think. Go to my YouTube channel and listen to it, and if you've played it yourself, please, I want to know. Let's listen to just a short excerpt. Now number 2, Freud und Leid, Joy and Sorrow. This is, of course, the second of the 3 lyric pieces. The form is ABA, with piano introduction and a small coda. This has a much more striking change that's brought about in the middle section if you compare it to number 1, Longing. The tonality is C major minor with a 6/8 meter, and I love that it has this 6/8 almost lilting kind of meter. It uses the A string almost exclusively, except a little dip down into the D string in the middle, the B section, and at the end, where the coda actually falls down, the notes fall down in the coda very rapidly in the last couple measures, which plummet actually down to the dredges of the open C string, and finally all 4 strings having been used. It uses the highest range of all 3, with a fantastic soaring A harmonic, which is played down at the end of the fingerboard, and he does this several times throughout. The cello and piano seem much more like a partnership to me. It has hints of melodic figures throughout in the piano, and here the middle section is quite a bit more agitated and is marked poco più mosso. Now when the A section material comes back, that is, you've heard the A section, then the B section, which is more agitated, more maybe turbulent is a good way to say it too, at least in parts. And then the A section material returns, but where he's added a little bit more motion to the piano accompaniment, which in a way sometimes doesn't feel very accompanimental. It feels like it's very needed to propel the music forward, or it does help to propel it forward. Let's listen to a few excerpts from number 2, Joy and Sorrow. Number 3, Abendlied, or Evening Song. Here is the third and final of the 3 lyric pieces. The form is once more ABA, with a piano introduction and a small coda. It is calmer music, as suggested by the title, but it has a melancholic tinge to it, I would say. It's in G minor major tonality, where we are flanked by G minor, but in the middle, G major. It is in 4/4 meter. Well, it's actually marked common time, but we count it as 4/4, don't we? The melody consistently dips down into the D string notes, usually for short snippets, and not too deep into the D string, just 1 or 2 notes down. The B section nearly ignores the D string altogether, which actually seems pretty appropriate, and I'm rather pleased that he decided to ignore the D note, despite what I had said at the beginning, where I thought, oh, he uses the A string too much. But here, I think it's appropriate because the B section, the middle, is in G major, and it needs something to counteract the more subdued, more melancholy nature of the G minor A section. The piano acts as an accompaniment, and to my mind, it's somewhat of a low-frequency melodist. He takes little snippets of either melody or counter-melody, or maybe even something a little bit different, which can be heard here and there. This one might be the most difficult for one main reason, and maybe just take it with a grain of salt, but it's much more swooping or dipping and rising, and has the careful, well, you need to be, I think, a little more careful about your notes because of this evening song. If you're going to reflect that it's an evening song, of course you want to be a little more subdued, a little more gentle, maybe even quieter in some regards, because you're evoking the quietness, the stillness of the evening, and where one is perhaps getting ready for bed even. This is the only one of the three that uses double stops, and it is reserved for the very end of the set. These three lyrical pieces, Opus 117, Longing, Joy and Sorrow, and Evening Piece, I think it's a worthy set of pieces. Is a worthy set of pieces for any student and for performers wanting to add a touch of lyrical poignancy through unknown music. And of course, a little more simple in construction. I've recorded all three of these. You can see them on my YouTube channel. That is Traveling Cello. If you would like them as an audio that is uninterrupted by talking, such as this podcast, send me a message via YouTube channel, via my YouTube channel, Patreon, or when you send a donation to my paypal.me/travelingcello. And just let me know. It'd be nice to hear these all the way through. Thanks for listening, and remember to play more forgotten cello music.